Woburn. I'm your host, Samantha Stone. It is sunshiny and warm, and summer is absolutely amongst us. We have two really interesting candidates that are running for key positions in our city we're going to talk to today. But before we do that, we'll get a general update with Mayor Scott Galvin, as always. Welcome, Scott.
Hi, Samantha. Good to be here.
Thanks. We turned out we had a nice day for Memorial Day Remembrance ceremony in the center.
Yeah, we did. It was a nice ceremony and good crowds throughout the city. That as we say, the Woburn residents always support veterans and those who gave their life for our country, and there's always great support throughout the community for veterans, and again those who served and the families as well who made the sacrifice for our country.
Yeah, it was really. I saw some beautiful pictures. It was great to see that. I was glad so many people turned out. I want to talk about budgets. We won't go into detail. We've talked ad nauseum about school committee budgets, so we're not going to do that. But I want to talk about the process. So at this point, you have presented budget to City Council, if I understand correctly, and public hearings are on June 12th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the budget is obviously the entire city budget, not, I know we've been talking a lot about school committee. That's been a particular area of interest for people, but this is the entirety of the budget, correct?
It is. So that includes the water and sewer enterprise fund, and it also includes the city general fund too. Yep.
Going into the budget discussions, I think there was one union contract that was outstanding maybe last time we spoke. Has that been wrapped up at this point?
No, that's the police superiors, and that's still not settled, and we're working our way through that. We're working through what's called the JLMC process. That's when you come to basically the point where you're not able to settle, so you one party or the other can file what's called binding arbitration, and that's where we are now. It's a slowed down process, and we're working our way through that now.
Okay. And if I remember correctly, the school nurses agreement is not yet done either.
No, it's actually the custodians and the secretary. So the school nurses are part of the teachers, okay, along with the paraprofessionals as well. So those have settled. We're working our way through the custodians and the secretarial contracts now too.
Okay. Now, some of the changes in positions affect the assistant admin positions. Does that affect the negotiations in any way, or are we moving forward with those as we were?
Run that by me again, Samantha.
So if I understand correctly, and I might be mistaken because I have chemo brain, so you'll forgive me if I'm messing some things up. Some of the positions in the current budget that has been proposed to City Council and how the administration has said it has eliminated some administrative positions, I understand, in the schools. So given that we are negotiating contracts with admins, does it have any effect on that process?
There may be some impact on bidding, and how that sorts its way out through seniority, but that's not, really what we're looking at is the term of the contract, the wages and whatnot. So that's the main thing we're trying to work out. The other things would go through the regular process based on seniority.
Okay, good. Just as in terms of budget, is there anything you want to have the community know before the public hearings, either today or we can talk about another time, if there's anything you want to update people on?
No, it's a good process. If people do want to be involved, the City Council has, I think their first meeting is Thursday at 6:00. They'll have committee meetings with 6 or 7 of the smaller city departments, and then I think they have another. You can check with the city clerk. I'm not sure the dates, but there's another one the following week. And then they leave some time open in case they need other committee hearings. But it's a good process, and it's always good that you shed light on it, Samantha, so people do, if they have questions, they know where to go and how to have their voice heard on different budgeting issues. So it's a good time of the year, and this is the time that people have the ability to talk about the finances and how they would not want money spent, or how they might suggest there's better ways. Not to say that'll change, but there certainly is time to make their feelings known about budgeting and budgeting priorities.
Now, the school budget, it's very public because it affects so many people very directly, and because of the school committee has a lot of public hearings on it. But every department is in the process of building their budgets, presenting those to you, you're rolling those up. So it's a great opportunity for people to understand and learn about what's happening, even if it's just in listening and really just understanding where things are. So that's great. Only other little thing I wanted to mention, Scott, was that the senior pickleball courts are open for the season. And I know the Clap Water Park is started to be open now that we've got some warmer weather. So people who are eager to get outside and move their bodies a little bit, there's lots of opportunities to do that.
There certainly is. And, we had a good weekend, and I know it's supposed to be warm towards the end of this week. So graduation coming up on Friday evening, which is my first for an evening graduation. So we're looking forward to that. And I think there's a nice event over at Spence Farm on Saturday, an arts program. So that'll be good. And of course, when the weekends start getting warm, there's more to do outside. So as you said, get outside and do what you can do.
Yeah, and we've got I know there's the gun violence proclamation on Friday during the day as well, so students can participate, and so there's lots of great opportunities for people to get involved.
And that's good. Your mother does that, and there's I'm glossing over things until you reminded me that's a great
Pride flag raising too. Is that
Pride flag is Thursday at 5:30.
Look at all this amazing stuff across our city. It's amazing. It's awesome.
Yeah, so it'll be busy Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We've got quite a bit to do. Check the website if you're looking for times for different events. So that's on there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks, Scott, for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Samantha. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, you too. Next up, Tracy Jolly, who's a candidate for Ward 7 City Council. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Samantha.
I'm so glad that you could be here. I know you know this because you've been part of our community for a long time. City Council is a big commitment. There's a lot that goes into it. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to decide to run this term.
Sure. Well, as far as timing, I finally have the bandwidth. For the longest time, I've had so many personal and professional commitments that have just kept me away from getting this involved this involved into the city. But now that my daughter's off to college, going into her sophomore year, and since post-COVID, I've been working from home a lot more often, which pretty much got me an additional 3 hours a day of not having to commute into the city. So I've got the bandwidth now and the time to do it. But more importantly, to the time aspect of it, I just feel as though I've been so fortunate. I had such a great foundation growing up in the city, having been a product of the Woburn school system and our wonderful educators. I feel like that I want future generations to have some of those opportunities. And I think this is a good position for me to be in where I can have some influence on that.
And you currently serve on the board of trustees for the library, correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
I started on that last year. Scott appointed me to that, or I'm sorry, Mayor Galvin appointed me to that position. And I've been working with that group for over a year now, and enjoying it and cleaning up some of the things like the old bylaws that we had, rewriting those and that type of stuff. So I am involved in the city, but the time commitment for the trustee, I know is a lot less than what would be for the city council position. And I'm ready to take that on.
That's great. So, I thought it would be a good opportunity just to get know you a little bit better, and for those who are watching to get to know you better. For those who have been part of Ward 7 in particular, although all of the city councils play a role across the whole city, of course. What are some of the key priorities and opportunities specific to Ward 7 that you're excited to have an opportunity to help drive?
Sure. And I'm sure most of you have heard all of this already, but one of the biggest issues I think that we have is the infrastructure in Ward 7, primarily the issue over at Bedford Road and Cambridge Road, which from my understanding of the Department of Transportation's website and Catherine Clark's information, it looks as though it's actually in the budget for 2025. And I'm hoping that that transpires, and if I can be any part to make that move forward more quickly, I certainly will. Of course, those are state roads, so that could be difficult. But in addition to that is our open space that we have here on the west side. The Shaker Glen walking pass, the Whispering Hill walking pass, and then of course the Tarkey School site that I think we're all still trying to figure out what we want to happen over there. In my mind, there's no question that it should remain open space. It's just a matter of how can we best utilize it as open space so that everybody can get enjoyment out of that old site there. And then the other issue that I think is important on the west side is that we maintain a strong working relationships with our businesses. We don't have a whole lot of businesses over here, but those that we have been here for a very long time. And I think that they bring value to our community in addition to funding on our taxes. So I just think it's very important that we maintain good working relationships and we all are good neighbors to each other.
Yeah, I love it. Talk a little bit about how your leadership style might differ or in some ways be the same as past city councilors or current city council for Ward 7.
Sure. So I feel as though the best leaders lead by example. I have, a history in Woburn, of course, that you've already alluded to, a positive history. I was a police officer here in the city for over 20 years. In addition to being an attorney for over 23 years, I've always been involved in the community. I was the city's first substance abuse program coordinator. Incidentally, my husband, Rick, was the second city's substance abuse program coordinator. And my work on the police department, my work as a trustee. But in addition to all of that, I'm also a volunteer for a number of businesses. I was a Special Olympics of Mass coordinator for a gymnastics program. I've run programs for Dress for Success. I've coordinated groups within my office to volunteer their time at Rosie's Place in Boston, and I'm on the pro bono committee in my office. So I bring that leadership to the position of city council.
I think your background as having been a police officer is really interesting and not as common as some of the other things that you talked about. So I just want to sort of hone. I'm really intrigued in the role as police officer. You got a really different point of view than most of us do about our community and the people. You interact with people probably in some of their worst moments. You interact with people in some of their most need. You probably also interact with people as you're sort of just walking around and helping staff events, hopefully in good, joyful moments as well. What did being a police officer in our community sort of teach you about Woburn and what we need and where we should go?
Sure. Well, the one thing that stands out, and everybody talks about it, and you just spoke with Mayor Galvin a bit about it as well, is just the strong sense of community the city has. And it was never more obvious than when Officer Jack McGuire had the tragic shooting in Woburn years back. And it never ceases to amaze me and my husband when we talk about it, how many people, the outpouring of support that the police department had from the city, the residents of the city, and how people are still showing up to the events that occur on the Memorial for Jack annually over across from the post office over in East Woburn. It just never ceases to amaze me. So the sense of community, I think, was something that I first started to notice back when I was working as a reserve police officer, and it's just something that never it's outstanding. I also recognize the importance of public servants. Our city wouldn't run as efficiently as it does without the great people that work in the police department and the fire department. In addition, of course, to our educators, which I already spoke about, just the foundation that they gave me. And finally, the one thing that I was just abundantly clear, and you have just alluded to, is the position made me understand that Woburn's not immune to substance abuse issues, and that a lot more needs to be done. And this was years ago that I was the substance abuse program coordinator, and my husband did a whole lot, but there's so much more that needs to be done. So those were the primary things that sort of stuck out to me on what I started to recognize or notice in the city when I was working as a police officer.
Yeah, thank you. You know, one of the things that I think is always a need is you always want your public service to represent and different backgrounds of people. And one of the things we know is there's not a lot of women in law enforcement in general. There's not a lot of women in the Woburn Police Department. What are some things you might say to encourage people who are considering a career in law enforcement to take into account, to think about?
Sure, that's interesting. You said that when I started on the department many years ago. I've since retired, of course. There were I believe three women on the department in total, and we've gone through spurts where we've gotten more and more women, and some come and go. To encourage women to do it, it's such you look at yourself every evening after you've worked and realize you're actually making a difference. It's something that's just it's so important, and it's such an enormous role in a city, especially a city our size, to have women in those positions. When all of the incidences or calls that an officer goes on aren't all men. Sometimes they need a woman to be there to talk to them, to help out the situation, good, better, and different. It sometimes is helpful to have a woman there, and it's such a phenomenal job and something I really enjoyed doing personally.
Yeah, I love it. You're a lawyer. You had spoken about that. Current for a lot of what you're doing, and trustees is using that expertise to help us in that capacity. But one of the groups that you represent outside of the city, but in your actual work, you talk about representing construction companies. Obviously, City Council has a role in our community in budgeting and permanent building and all kinds of things that happen. How will you make sure there's not a conflict of interest between that professional work and the work you do on behalf of our city?
Sure. So my construction law practice was a few years back. So I have not been currently involved in that. I'm currently National Administrative Counsel at my firm. But the construction law piece, even when I was practicing and representing construction professionals, they weren't, to my knowledge, doing work in Woburn or in this area. So I don't foresee having that issue or that any of them would come forward requiring or submitting a permit request. However, should that occur, I would certainly, weigh it, analyze it, and determine if recusal is necessary. And I just wouldn't be involved in those particular permit requests.
Awesome. Excellent. The budget process this year has been intense. I mean, it's always intense. Look, we always want to spend more money than we have. That is just the world we live in, because we don't have infinite resources, and we have lots of amazing, great ideas as a city. And it's hard and it's not easy to do. But City Council plays a really important role in budgeting, because ultimately they have to evaluate the budget that comes to them and approve it, or we don't have one. Talk to me a little bit about how you would approach budgeting as a city councilor, and kind of where we are and where you think you'd like to see us be.
Sure. I don't envy anybody in the positions of that everybody was in this time around with the school department and that budget. As to how I would approach it, did you say differently?
It doesn't have to be differently. Just, obviously you're not in that role today, so I'm asking you to do a little bit of hypothetical thinking. Sure. But it would be helpful to just understand how you would approach it and kind of how you feel about where we are and what happens next.
Sure. I as far as how I feel about where we are, I'm very confident that things are going to work out in the best interest of if we're referring to the school department, in the best interest of our students, and if we're referring to the overall budget, well, in the best interest of the residents of Woburn. And the reason I feel so strongly that it's going to work out okay, despite some different departments probably hoping for more than what they were able to get in the budget. The reason I have that confidence is because I just have confidence in the system, and I have confidence in the administrators that they're going to, they were put into those positions because they know how to manage budgets and manage people. And I just feel as though, I don't think I'm naive in believing that they'll be able to manage with what they have and still provide quality education and quality services to the city with what they've got.
Excellent. So before I let you wrap up and just sort of share anything you want residents to know, I do want to just ask in particular, I know you had a campaign kickoff event recently. Where else can folks either meet up with you or find information if they'd like to learn more about your candidacy?
Sure. Well, for starters, I do have a website, jollyforwoburn.com. They can go on there and learn more about my campaign and about what I stand for and what I hope to do for the city. I did have the kickoff last week, which it was a great success. I was very happy at the outcome. I will be having meet and greets, and those will be posted on Facebook. The dates and times and places are not finalized yet, but my Facebook account is Elect Tracy Radosha Jolly, Woburn City Council, Ward 7. So
3 times really, really fast, Tracy.
And my tongue will start rolling. And then of course I'm going to be doing more door knocking, which I've started to do already, and sign holding and all of that. I pretty much let everybody know where I am and where I'm going on Facebook. So I'll continue to do that. And if anybody has any questions that they want to direct to me before that time, or if they don't happen to see me, please go on my Facebook site and go into message, and I'll respond.
I love it. Thank you. We'll have you on close to the election again, just to sort of, as you're out talking to people and check in. But in the meantime, is there anything else you'd like residents to know about your candidacy?
You know, I think I spoke. I think I'm very qualified to take on the role of a city councilor. I think a lot of the work that I've done as an attorney and the work that I've done in the city will transfer well to the role of city council. And I feel as though the skills that I have, I can bring to city council and start work on day one for both the city and for Ward 7. So I'm really looking forward to the campaign, looking forward to meeting everybody. I'm very excited about this opportunity.
Thank you so much for joining us, Tracy. I appreciate it. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Samantha.
I'm excited to be here. James Austin is a candidate for school committee. Before we do anything else, first, I want to say congratulations. You had a really big education milestone yourself recently. Tell us about
Yes.
that.
Wow, that's been 10 plus years in the making. So I graduated Middlesex Community College with my degree in human services. And I'm so braggish about my GPA, which was a 3.60. Very, very hard work on my behalf. Also, my wife, she helped me through math. So, math is not my area. So I needed all the assistance I can get. Also, I have a concentration in addiction counseling. So this where my heart is, serving people. It's always been. So I actually received my certificate in addiction counseling maybe last year or so.
Well, congratulations. That's such a great, amazing milestone. And to do that over that amount of time takes endurance and care, which is amazing. Now, you just finished this big, long slog of things, and you're like, oh, okay, I have nothing else to do now, so I'm going to run for city council. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to put your hat in the ring and step up to help serve that way.
Well, I do want to say thank you before we get started, just for you to all that you do, and thank you for the invite for me to be here. I really appreciate it. So the short answer, I would say, for me making that decision, or that plunge, some might call it, is to just be the change that I want to see. One thing that I try to teach my kids is to step up and be present for other people. Something I've always taught them in school. If they see someone sitting alone, go up to them, introduce yourself. If there are kids being mean to someone else, I would encourage them to speak up for that child, or maybe speak to staff or a teacher of some sort. And so this kind of leads into my longer answer, which is in doing so, encouraging my children to speak up for others. I found myself only speaking up for my children. We've dealt with situations within the school for many, many years. I would say since my daughter, that's 20 now, she had a situation in elementary school. And I as a dad, you want to be there. I would say I want to be there, and I will connect with, I will connect with teachers, professionals, whoever, to kind of handle the situation. But more recently, with my son in school, a lot of his friends were coming to my wife and I talking about situation of discrimination and racism. And the first question I would respond is, did you talk to your parent? And they would immediately say, my mom can't or will not, or I was told by one of the kids that their parents said if they bring anything of that nature back to them, they're going to send them back to their country. So, and the second question is, did you talk to the principal? And they said, only but so much can be done. So hearing all of this, it just kind of stirred me, and I was convicted that there's something that needs to be done, and who else if not me? And so I decided, I can't advocate for these kids as a dad, but I can show up for them as a school committee member. So the more that I learned about the position and the role of a school committee member, one of the most important roles I've heard was I get to be the bridge between the school and the students. So it just kind of makes sense that based off of what I've always done, which is serve and work with young people, it just kind of seemed like it fit. So that's the longer,
thank you for being
story.
a safe place for students, right? To talk and coach and all the amazing things that you do. The budget process for school committee has been intense. It's always intense. Look, I think it's been more visible and more vocal, and we've had to make some particularly difficult decisions this year. It looks like are going to happen that maybe we haven't had to make for a long time. Kind of talk a little bit about if you're elected school committee, what about this process do you appreciate? What about this process do you feel might have had a different outcome, or maybe not? Just kind of get your feeling on it.
Initially, well, that's a great question. Initially, I would say what I do appreciate is that because I don't have all the answers, I appreciate that there are other members of the school committee team that can collectively come together, and which is what I've been seeing. I've seen communication amongst all, and I really appreciate that. As others have mentioned, I'm really seeing a sense of community even more. Even since my announcement, I've seen more the community as if band together, and so I really appreciate that. What I would do differently, I guess that's the question.
Well, I mean, and the answer may be, Smith, I wouldn't do anything differently, but here's how I think about where we're at. I mean, I just want to understand. I know you've been watching it. I know you've been, intimately involved. You care a lot about it. Just thought I'd give you an opportunity to share your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Well, initially, I was really angry when I first heard. This whole journey is all new to me. Even the school committee last year, I was not aware that there was a such board of the school board or school committee. So the more that I kind of dove in, I've learned. And when I've heard that budgets were cut, or possibly being cut, I was angry. But the more I learned, and I stopped being so angry, I started being more concerned. My 9-year-old has an IEP, and so it's been a real struggle for us to gain services for her even now. So I started to think, well, if things are going to be cut, there's a chance that maybe she won't receive any services or even less. And so again, as I think not just about my children, about my family, I think about the other families and the kids that need services. So, and I start thinking about the teachers, and if teachers are let go of their positions, that means someone's going to have to step up in that position, that place. And so there's a good chance for burnout. So these are just the emotional part. But as Tracy Jolly mentioned, I personally wouldn't want to be in a mayor's position. That is a challenge. And so as the idea of possible being a school committee member is something that I have considered a lot of. But again, I'm excited to know that it's not just me having to make this decision, that I have a team to rely on, to bounce ideas, to gain understanding. So those are some of the thoughts that I do have. I'm a thinker. I'm an out of the box thinker, and I know one of the cuts is gym and library. And so me being out of the box thinker, and I believe in it takes a village, and I believe in community. And so I would love to see the community members, those that are able to give their time and maybe support the school, maybe assist in gym time. I surely would do so. I would love to be part of gym time. Maybe if we have enough community members that have stepped in, maybe the children will be able to have the gym twice a day, twice a week. So these are the out of the box ideas that I think I would bring to the table, just being a kind of the radical thinker that I am.
Well, thank you for doing that. I think you make a valid point. Look, at the end of the day, we're going to have an amount of money, whatever that amount of money ends up being, and it's not finished yet, but whatever that amount of is, we won't have all the things that we want. So can we get creative about how we fill some of those gaps? So thanks for sharing that perspective. I think that's really valuable. One of the things I would love for you to do is, you have children in the school system, have been involved in many ways. What are some of the things that you think overall the school does really well in Woburn and you're really particularly proud of?
Oh, this is a great question. This actually gives me a chance to brag on the school. I would say simply is the people. I love the teachers. I've had so many stories just talking to my children over the years, like so many things that they have learned. Maybe from my wife and I, but I feel like they've been what's the word? Reiterated, I guess, or from their teachers. I'll give an example. During COVID, my son was, I think, in middle school, and it was really challenging for him to learn the sight music for the band. And Mr. Turcott, I'm going to shout out him. He decided to bring oil, and he decided to mentor my child every week. He taught him how to read sight music. And so my son now wants to use his summer money when he gets a job. He wants to buy a cello and he wants to buy a violin. Like, amazing. To me, it's such a wonderful thing to have teachers that'll go above and beyond for a child. To me, as a dad, that's something that you always want. You want someone else to see your children as a gift as well, as much as you do. So I really love the teachers. And that's just one example of awesome teachers, and not just teachers, the staff, the facility managers. They've been great. Every time I go to the school, they're willing to speak to me. We have good conversations. On top of that, I would say the activities. In high school, I didn't have as many opportunities. My 9-year-old, she'll be 20 soon, she got a chance to play the tuba. Just being on the stage, playing at UMass Lowell at one point when she was in middle school, like that's to me wonderful. Even walking the band for being part of the parade for the Halloween parade. I mean, these are some of the things that I think make our school so great. Just the camaraderie that I see. My son comes home. Yeah, there are, negative here and there, but I would say the love that I have seen and experienced has definitely topped all of that.
I love that. One of the things that you talked about in your announcement or if not in the actual announcement, in subsequent conversations, was about equity and how important that is to have in our school system. What does equity mean to you?
So equity means everything to me. One of the I don't want to say challenge, but one thing that a lot of people of color must do with their children is have the talk. Many people have heard of the talk, which is the talk that we would have to kind of prepare our kids when they go into the world. Now, this conversation does not just end dealing with officers. It continues within the school system. And so I have to sit with my kids and explain to them that they may be treated a little different because of who they are, because of their skin color. And so not having the equity amongst students is really disfortunate, because a lot of times it goes further than just your skin color. It could be your sexual preference, or whether it's a disability seen or unseen. And oftentimes people are treated differently based on those facts. And so not being accepted for who someone is really sad for me. And I would love to see more, unified treatment towards all. So it's something that really sticks out to me. And I've experienced and I've heard even recently of the situation the kids at school are dealing with. And I want to see the treatment improve, the treatment towards one another. And so it is something that's really close to my heart that I would love to see shape and move in a different direction.
Thank you for that. And I know a lot of times we also have equity among schools, right? We have multiple elementary schools, we have multiple middle schools, at least today. And they, schools have to have a little bit of flexibility to meet the character of the community and the needs of that particular community. We also want to make sure that everyone is being treated equitably across the different schools, class sizes, and other things as well. I know are big topics of conversation. Before I let you go, James, tell us a little bit about your vision for the school system and your qualifications. You've done a lot in this community. You've done a lot for yourself and learning and all the things we talked about at the beginning. I want to make sure that our audience knows the real you, James. Tell us, give us the rundown.
The rundown. This is something that is really challenging for me to talk about me. I don't know why. It's always been, but I've been.
There's no humbles here. This is like lay it on us.
So no time to be humble. I guess my qualifications. I started working. Well, I'll go back a little. I actually went to school for HVAC, heat and vented air conditioning. I kind of was the guy that liked to use his hands. And long story short, I got hurt. And I had a job.
My son's a metal fabricator. That's what he does. He works for an HVAC company.
Yeah, and it was great. The education was great. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed working with my hands. But I got hurt on a job, not related to that work, but I was a tire technician. I got hurt. And I had to change my career. And my job coach at the time she said, well, what else do you like to do? I said, well, I like people. And so my new career direction was formed. So I started to volunteer at my church. My wife and I became youth presidents at our church, overseeing the young people, all age young people. So we really had a variety of people to serve. From there, I actually got a job with an organization called Tech Mission, which was through AmeriCorps. So I served as an AmeriCorps member. I was an after-school coordinator for 2 years. So I jumped in and was working an after-school program, and from then I just decided, I'm gonna retrain myself. So I started to learn and take whatever certificate program I can get. I decided I became a youth worker. I got a certificate in youth work. I actually went to juvenile justice training through Gordon Conway Hume. I learned and I continue. Eventually, I started to go to community college, and I have maybe 700 hours of training involving youth and young adult work. So I would say out of all of my accomplishments as far as school-wise, I think the most accomplished is me being a dad. I think to me, being a father has really helped me to understand young people and just listen to their heart. As a dad, I'm always checking myself, and as I told you earlier, I'm always relearning, and my children are teaching me to be a better person. So I think those are some of the areas that really has made me qualified, and just being a person that's kind of on the ground, even prior to even thoughts of being on the school committee, I've always was at the school, whether it was my son's football game, and I'm always talking to the young people. A lot of the young people I see, I coached in soccer, I coached at baseball at some point. I was a Boy Scout leader, so I'm always seeing the young people, and I'm watching them grow up. And I just check in, So I think regardless of my past school knowledge, I think being a person that's kind of with the people, I think to me that really makes my qualifications high. So I do have some ideas for, I told you I'm a thinker. I like to think out of the box. I actually, again, prior to thinking about being on the school committee, I went and I spoke with Dr. Crowley, and I spoke with Principal Martin about an idea of having dads come to the school. So I saw this segment on the news about, I think it was Chicago, and it was really violent history in the school. And they had men show up, and I'm learning about the power of presence. And I thought, you know what? Out of all that I'm hearing about Woburn schools, I'm hearing a lot of things from the kids. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be a great opportunity to support our kids, to support our staff and our teachers, to have some volunteer men, obviously get quarried and just show up. And so I'm thinking more or less the high school and the middle school, and just have been present, not to enforce rules, but more or less be a dad, or just be a good person and tell dad jokes or give high fives and just be present. And so another idea is I want to connect with the senior center. I know there are some seasoned men that will be so perfect to kind of be on this mission of community involvement within the school. So that is one idea that I want to bring. I would love to see also more diversity within the staff. So I'm a member of the NAACP Mystic Valley chapter, and there's an organization called MPDE. Forgive me, I wrote the name down. I'm bad with acronyms. It's Massachusetts Partnership for Diversity. And I've been working with them, and I've met with Regina Kane, the executive director, and I met with the human resource, I think her name is Marissa, at the school department about ways to bring diversity. This is prior to the school committee. This is something that I want to continue kind of that journey on is I really believe that the school should reflect the those that we serve. And I think in doing so, we would have a little more camaraderie between staff and students. Those are two ideas that right off the top. As I mentioned earlier, I know it's something I got
sharing them. And I know people are looking at your background, and I'm just gonna, it is The Simpsons, because I asked James before we started typing. So if you're thinking it looks familiar, and that James has a sense of humor, you are correct. It is. And
I actually decorated my home. This is a live background. This is not a no, I'm joking.
Can you imagine? That would be even all over the top. James, for those folks who want to learn more about you, any events you want to talk about, or places that people go to connect with you and get a chance to chat with you and take advantage of your people personality and share their thoughts and ideas about the schools?
Sure. Right now, people can connect with me on Facebook at Austin School Committee. My website is in the works. I'm always somewhere. I have a soccer game on Saturday, so I will be at the soccer field Saturday morning. I'll be coaching, so I'll be on the coaching side. I'll also be at, I believe, there's an ice cream social kind of gathering that day. I'm also planning on going to the guild, the Artist Guild. So I'm planning on showing up at events. It's something that I always enjoy doing. I love being around people. As my late pastor would say, people are my business, and I agree. People are. I don't know. I just find I love people. I can't help it. It's just who I am.
I love that. I think it's fantastic. You saying that, I'm going to ask you one more question. I was wrapping up, but you spurred a thought in my head. One of the things that is always a challenge and an opportunity for city representation is that you have to represent our community as a whole. And sometimes people are going to come to you things that you either may not agree with or may not have been aware of or have a different perspective over. As a school committee member, tell us a little bit about how you will embrace those ideas that maybe aren't yours and evaluate and, do the things that you need to do to represent the community overall.
That's a great question. So, as someone that recently graduated, I'll tell you this: I'm not done with school. I'm already back in school. I'm going for my I say my master's because I'm trying to psych myself out because obviously I got to get my bachelor's first. A class that I recently have taken was chaplaincy, and so a huge part of chaplaincy is healing presence. So the healing presence is to listen, not just to react, but listen to kind of take in and really be empathetic to that individual. So if I have ever come across anyone that's their views are unlike mine, it's okay. At the end of the day, I value you as a person, and I value what you say, your thoughts. I find individuals' history, where they've been, where they've come from, is fascinating to me. So I'll be willing to just listen. And even though if it's different, I believe wholeheartedly that there's something that me and that person will connect in. Maybe it is The Simpsons. And so I would be okay with our differences. And I think it's important to learn from our differences and actually see where our similarities are, because that by having our differences and being able to respect that individual based off of our differences and actually see our similarities, that's how we build community. And we can't have unity without community. So I'm okay. And I would love to kind of know why, how come? Instead of why, how come you think that way? I'm interested. I'm genuinely interested. I don't like to be a poser, if you will. I like to be genuine with people as I will be with them. So I hope that answered your question, and I appreciate all of this. It's exciting.
Thank you, James, so much for joining us. And Woburn, as always, there are so many ways to get involved in our community. I hope to see you at some of the places that I will be at. There's places I won't have a chance to be at, but I encourage you to go out there, meet all these candidates who are making themselves available. Local government is just foundational to our day-to-day lives. So it's such a wonderful opportunity when we see people step up, willing to serve, and really give their time. So I encourage you to get to know them. And as always, please continue to take good care of each other.